Hello dear chess fans, my name is Eugene Grinis. Welcome to my free chess school, from beginners to advanced, open for everyone who wants to improve own game. This video is intended for the beginners. No game is lost without a mistake being made, be it a blunder or a slight inaccuracy, an error in the calculation of variation or in the assessment of a position. In this video we will be dealing with mistakes which are committed in the initial stages of a game. We will dwell on errors which involve a breaking of the basic principles of opening play. Our attention will be mainly devoted to typical tactical mistakes and their consequences. There are some practical opening rules for beginners which are usually worth remembering. These rules are: 1. Open with either the e-pawn or the d-pawn. 2. Wherever possible, make a good developing move which threatens something. 3. Develop knights before bishops. 4. Pick the most suitable square for a piece and develop it there once and for all. 5. Make one or two pawn moves in the opening, not more. 6. Do not bring your queen out early. 7. Castle as soon as possible, preferably on the king's side. 8. Play to get control of the center. 9. Always try to maintain at least one pawn in the center. 10. Do not sacrifice without a clear reason. 11. Complete your development before you attack. 12. Pay attention to your opponent's moves. 13. Avoid exchanging bishops for knights. And rule number 14. Fight for space. Now let's take a look at the following game. e4, c5. You should already know the name of this opening. This is the Sicilian Defence. Knight f3, d6. Other popular continuations for black are knight c6, e6, g6, knight f6, Nimzowitsch-Rubinstein variation. d6 was played in the game. Bishop b5 check. This is called Kanal-Sokolsky attack. Bishop d7. Bishop takes bishop, check. Queen takes bishop. c4. Queen to g4, attacking white's two pawns. White will lose one of them. White castles. Queen takes pawn on e4, winning a pawn. At the same time, black falls behind in development. d4. A lead in development is most easily exploited in an open position. Knight c6, knight c3, developing the knight and attacking black's queen with a tempo. Queen to g4. Knight b5. Bishop, queen d7. Covering the c7 square, but losing one more tempo. Pawn takes pawn on c5. Pawn takes pawn. Bishop f4. Black castles queen side. After queen takes queen, knight c7 check, king d8, rook takes queen check, king c8, knight takes rook on a8. White has a winning material advantage. Let's go back to the game. Black castles queen side. Queen a4. Queen f5. Attacking the bishop on f4. a6. Attacking the knight is met by knight e5. Knight takes knight on e5. If pawn takes knight on e5, then follows knight takes queen, and if pawn takes queen, then can you find mate in 1 in this position? Please pause the video. Knight b6 is a checkmate. Let's go back to this position. Knight takes knight on e5. Bishop takes knight on e5. Threatening mate in 1 after knight a7. b6. Queen takes pawn on a6 check. Queen b7, the only move. Knight a7 check. King d7, the only move. Queen takes queen, check, with a decisive material advantage. Let's go back to the game. Queen f5 was played. Bishop to g3. a6, attacking the knight on b5. If the knight retreats, Black can finally develop his king side. But rook a to d1 was played. The knight on b5 cannot be taken. If pawn takes knight on b5, then can you find mate in 2 in this position? Please pause the video. Queen a8 check, knight b8, the only move, queen takes knight, checkmate. Let's go back to the game. Rook a to d1, rook takes rook, rook takes rook on d1, knight f6, developing the knight. And now queen a5, sacrificing the queen and threatening mate in 1 on c7. If knight takes queen, then can you find mate in 1 in this position? Please pause the video. Knight a7 is a checkmate. Let's go back to the game. Queen a5 was played. Knight e8, covering the c7 square. Now, can you find mate in 2 in this position? Please pause the video. Queen d8 check was played. The queen has to be taken. Knight takes queen. Knight a7, checkmate. It is surprising that the same poisoned pawn was captured by a grandmaster in the following game. e4, c5, the Sicilian Defence, knight f3, d6, bishop b5 check, the Canal Sokolsky attack, bishop d7, bishop takes bishop check, queen takes bishop, c4, queen to g4, attacking 2 pawns. White castles, queen takes pawn on e4, winning a pawn, d4, pawn takes pawn on d4, rook to e1, attacking the queen, queen to c6, knight takes pawn on d4, attacking the queen, queen takes pawn on c4. 4 tempi and 2 open files. This is what white has for 2 pawns. Black is already so far behind in development that even if he doesn't capture the second pawn, he is in trouble. For example, queen to d7, knight b5, threatening to take on d6, e6, defending the d6 pawn. Bishop f4, developing the bishop and attacking the d6 pawn again. e5, knight 1 to c3. The bishop on f4 cannot be taken. a6, attacking the knight on b5. Queen a4, pinning the a6 pawn and threatening a double attack with knight c7 check. Knight c6, developing the knight. Knight d5, threatening knight c7 check again. Rook c8, covering the c7 square and unpinning the a6 pawn. Knight b6, attacking the queen and the rook. Pawn takes knight on b5, attacking the queen. Pawn takes pawn on b5, attacking the knight on c6. Queen to g4. Knight takes rook on c8. Queen takes knight. Pawn takes knight on c6. Pawn takes pawn on c6. Black has an extra pawn, but now follows. Bishop takes pawn on e5, sacrificing the bishop for 2 pawns to open files. Pawn takes bishop. Rook takes on e5, check. Bishop e7. If king to d7, then follows rook d1, check. King to c7. After bishop d6, white plays queen a7, check. Queen c7. Now, can you find mate in 3 in this position? Please pause the video. The first move is rook takes bishop on d6, check. King takes rook on d6. Can you find mate in 1 in this position? Please pause the video. Queen d4 is a checkmate. Let's go back. Rook takes bishop on d6, check. If black plays king to c8, then can you find mate in 2 in this position? Please pause the video. Rook e8, check. Queen d8, the only move. Rook takes queen, checkmate. Let's go back to this position. Rook d1 check, king to c7. Queen a7 check, queen b7, the only move. How can white win material in this position? Please pause the video. The move is rook d7 check, deflecting the king. The rook has to be taken. King takes on d7. Queen takes queen. Check with a winning material advantage. For example, king to d8. Can you find mate in 3 in this position? Please pause the video. The first move is rook to a5, threatening mate in 1. For example, knight e7, rook a8 check, knight c8, the only move, rook takes knight, checkmate. Let's go back to this position. Rook takes on e5 check, bishop e7, rook c1, attacking the c6 pawn, knight f6, developing the knight, rook takes pawn on c6, attacking the queen, queen to d7. Now, can you find mate in 1 in this position? Please pause the video. Rook c8 is a checkmate. The rook cannot be taken by the queen since the queen is pinned, and the bishop on e7 cannot help his king since it is pinned by white rook. Let's go back to the game. Queen takes pawn on c4. Knight a3, developing the knight and attacking the queen. Queen to c8. Bishop f4, threatening to take the pawn on d6. Queen to d7, defending the pawn. Knight a to b5, attacking the pawn again. e5, defending. Bishop takes e5. This bishop sacrifice exposes the black king. Pawn takes bishop. Rook takes pawn on e5, check. Bishop e7 was played. If knight e7, then follows knight f5, queen takes queen, rook takes queen on d1, f6, attacking the rook, knight f to d6 check. King to d7. Knight f7 check. King e8. Knight takes rook on h8. And if now pawn takes rook on e5, then can you find mate in 1 in this position? Please pause the video. Knight c7 is a checkmate. Let's go back to this position. Bishop e7 was played. If king to d8, then follows queen f3, knight f6, developing the knight, rook d1, king to c8, knight f5, queen c6, knight f to d6 check, bishop takes knight, knight takes bishop on d6 check, king to c7. Now follows rook to c5, sacrificing the rook. Queen takes rook on c5. Now, can you find mate in 3 in this position? Please pause the video. The first move is queen takes pawn on b7 check. King d8, the only move. Can you find mate in 2 in this position? Please pause the video. Knight takes pawn on f7, double check. King e8, the only move. Can you find mate in 1 in this position? Please pause the video. Rook d8 is a checkmate. Let's go back to the game. Bishop e7 was played. Rook d5, attacking the queen. Rook sacrifice. Queen c8 was played. If queen takes rook on d5, then what should white play in this position? Please pause the video. Knight c7 check, attacking the king and the queen. Knight fork. King to f8. Knight takes queen on d5 with the winning material advantage for white. Let's go back to the game. Rook d5, queen c8. Knight f5, threatening knight d6 check. King f8. Knight takes bishop on e7, attacking the queen. king takes knight. Rook e5 check. After this move, black resigned. Let's see why. If king to f6, then can you find mate in 3 in this position? Please pause the video. The first move is queen f3 check. If king takes rook on e5, then can you find mate in 1 in this position? Please pause the video. Rook e1 is a checkmate. Let's go back. Queen f3 check. If king to g6, then can you find mate in 2 in this position? Please pause the video. Queen h5 check. King f6, the only move. Now can you find mate in 1 in this position? Please pause the video. Queen g5 checkmate. Let's go back to the game. Rook e5 check. If king f8, then follows queen d6 check, knight e7, the only move. Now can you find mate in 3 in this position? Please pause the video. Queen takes knight check. King g8, the only move. Can you find mate in 2 in this position? Please pause the video. Queen e8 check. The queen has to be taken. Queen takes queen. Rook takes queen. Checkmate. A back rank mate. Okay, that's the lesson for today from the Eugene Grinis Chess School. I hope it was useful and you enjoyed it. If so, push likes, subscribe to my YouTube channel and leave comments. Thanks for donations to my YouTube channel. You can find corresponding links in the video description. And the last question for today. Did you find an Easter egg in this video? It is all about viewing the video online, on YouTube or Facebook. Only then it is possible to open the description and to look in it for Easter egg. It is also possible to look what new appears in the last 10 seconds of the game, paying attention to Easter egg. Goodbye.